Okay, so let's get to my third question for you. I am sure that you get asked the same questions by writers all the time, probably some of the ones I've already asked you in this podcast. But what's a question that you rarely get asked by writers or publishers for that matter, but that you think people should be asking you? And what's your answer to it?
Is a book my next best step at this moment in time? I think that particularly applies to nonfiction authors more so than fiction. With nonfiction folks, often a book is not their next best step. A book performs well when it acts like an exclamation point at the end of a very long conversation you've been having with your readership or potential readership, a conversation you've probably been having for years. So I recommend undertaking a book when it appears blatantly missing from what you offer. When people are asking for it, where's the book? And I don't mean family and friends who will say that every time you go out for drinks. Why don't you write a book? Ignore those people. They don't know how
Right.
much work it is.
You say you're a writer, but where's your book?
Yeah,
Yeah.
those
Uh-huh.
people are terrible. So the people who are your fans that are otherwise strangers to you and they're asking for a book, that's a great sign a book is your next best step. Where writing and publishing a book is almost an act of service. Now, that's very nonfiction oriented. For
Mhm.
fiction, I think you can start writing and publishing as soon as you feel ready for some of the downer effect that's likely to occur after
Right. Right.
publication because you're so excited and it comes out and then you have to deal with the silence that, especially if you don't have an audience yet, that no one seems to be paying attention. The sales aren't as good as you thought. And that can really dampen your enthusiasm for writing a good
Mhm.
book. So, especially in the self publishing community, some people recommend not even publishing that first novel until you've got three,
Yeah.
because it just makes it a little easier to gain momentum.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not
It's
saying,
funny. That reminds me, I used to work in the entertainment industry and I was talking to a literary agent about screenwriting and screenplays. And he had said to me, he's the first question he asks whenever any writer's like, oh, we look at my screenplay, is how many have you written? And he said, if the answer is anything less than 10, he won't even look at it.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
even if they're really talented, their 10th one's going to be better than their
yes.
first one or their third one. And like that was just sort of an entry point for him.
Yes. You have exactly defined why it's such a tough road for fiction writers too. I think a lot of people don't realize it takes until you get to number 4, 5, 6, 12, whatever, to really find your space or get into a level of success that's going to feel satisfying.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting what you said also about it for nonfiction, it's coming at the end of the process because I think I see a lot of people that are doing it first,
Hmm.
right? And they're almost like, well, if I write this book, and I think in some ways, and maybe it can be a good forcing function, they're like, well, this is going to force me to sort of think through what my system really is or what I really believe about whatever. And I think a lot of people are also in the nonfiction space, they're writing the book so they can get speaking gigs or so it can
Hmm.
give them more perceived
Sure.
credibility or help them get clients. But I think that you're right. I think that like that idea that this comes at the end, and it's really interesting because to me, I get asked all the time. I blog and write newsletters, and I've probably written the equivalent of, I don't know, 5 books
Mm.
over the years. And I've never really wanted to pull the trigger on writing a book. And I've never quite been sure why, other than I think sort of a lot of the things that you've talked about today in this episode, right? The idea that it's a long process, things change by the time I publish it. Is it still going to be that relevant? I like the
Mhm.
speed of sort of blogging online and writing quicker
Yeah.
stuff. But I also think probably like you said, do I need it? Right. Am I at the end of this thing? And I've even had some people say, oh, why don't you write a book? I'd love to write a book. I don't know. I see it differently, right? I don't feel like, oh, I need the book to give me credibility or to get speaking gigs or any of that stuff. And yeah, but I think a lot of people, I definitely can see that where it seems like there's a lot of people that are writing books but have you done anything? Like what? I mean, what do you? Okay, let me ask you one more thing on this. What would you say? So I asked you, what's the question that not enough people ask? But what's the question that you get asked all the time that I would say is like an overrated or unnecessary? Everyone wants to know this, but you're like, yeah, I'll tell you the answer, but it doesn't really matter. I know Seth Godin always has that thing where it's like people want to know like what kind of pencil he uses. It's like the pencil's not the secret. It doesn't matter what tool I use. So I'm curious, what do you get asked a lot that you think is maybe an overrated question?
A lot of people want to know how to protect their work. They're scared it's going to
Mm,
get stolen, either the idea or the work itself. And I do actually have a post I wrote in response to that, so I could stop answering it each time.
yeah.
It's essentially stop worrying about this.
Hmm.
So I would say I don't know why people feel so fearful that they're going to destroy their market potential if they this especially comes to light when I suggest that folks share ideas, show their work in public, blog instead of do the book, or have a newsletter, any number that serialize your novel on Kindle
Yeah.
Vella. And people are like, well, but if I put it out, that's going to damage the market, or how will I ever sell a book if I give it away for free? And so there are like several different overlapping issues here. And it's like, it is so hard to get attention for anything, much less a piece of writing.
Yeah.
If someone like actually wants to steal your work and publicize it and bring attention, have at it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah. Exactly. No, you should be so lucky. And it's fun. This is another one that I think is super universal because you see it with business ideas. You see it in Hollywood. I would see it all the time, right? Where they'd be like, well, I don't know. I don't want to pitch my idea or I don't want to tell you about my script. And it's like, no one's stealing your stuff. I understand there's horror stories about whatever. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. But like for the most part, like again, I would also see it when people are trying to negotiate initial deals.
yes.
And in Hollywood, you see this all the time. Be like, look, you're gonna get screwed on your first deal. You're nobody.
Yeah.
That's not your problem. If it gets made, if it gets bought or whatever, you're now in the next thing. But you see people draw these hard lines in the sand of like, it's no one's going to steal my thing and I'm not going to get screwed over by Hollywood or by this business or whatever.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it just holds them back. Like that fear is overstated and irrational. And the truth is, I think I tweeted this at some point, but basically like I could give someone a foolproof greatest idea for a business ever guaranteed to work. And 99.9% of people would do nothing with it
Yeah.
because they don't act on it. They don't follow through. Like this idea that there's all these people who are like, if I just had Jane's idea for a romance novel, I'd be making billions on romance novels. It's like that, that's just not happening.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Execution is
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, no, I completely relate to that. Well, thank you so much for this. This was awesome. And I know it's definitely given me a bunch of stuff to think about. And I don't know that I'd say it's encouraging me to write a book, but maybe that's a good thing.
Well, Josh,
Uh,
knowing your work and all of the writing that you do, I would say you're actually really well positioned to do a book if you wanted to spend the time and effort. But it's so much work. So it's
oh,
so that
God, this podcast just took a dark turn. Well, what's the people hear what they want to hear, right? So I'm
yes.
just going to hear no, Jane said I shouldn't write a book. So if that's fine, I'll keep telling myself I don't need to write a book.